You're watching Tim Topham TV, the piano teaching podcast, and this is episode number 66. Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Tim Topham TV piano teaching podcast. Thank you very much for joining me today. This, as you know, is a place to listen or watch to really get inspired about your teaching, to find new creative ideas, to grow your studio, and also to motivate and enthuse your students. And today's podcast is all about another podcast, actually. It's about the Piano Parent podcast with a great teacher called Shelly Davis, who you'll be meeting very, very soon. Shelly has maintained a private studio in Texas since 1990. She's a national certified teacher of music through the MTNA and currently works with about 45 students each week. She offers many outside-the-box opportunities for making music on their own, such as a piano pop summer concert, where students are accompanied by a live band, and even the virtual recital on YouTube, where students coordinate images to illustrate their music and share links with their friends and family. And look, she recently started the Piano Parent podcast, a weekly podcast dedicated specifically to the parents of piano students. And when I heard about what Shelly was doing, I thought, wow, we've got to get her on the podcast to talk about podcasting and the importance of teaching our parents as much as we're teaching our students, because as we all know, oftentimes parents need as much help in understanding the process of their students' learning and guiding them, sometimes nagging them, as the students need the help. So helping parents understand better what their role is, I think is a fantastic thing. And so I'm really, really pleased that Shelly has been able to create this podcast, which really has just started. She's got, I think it's around 10 episodes or fewer. And I would thoroughly encourage you to go and check it out. We'll give you all the links as usual at timtopham.com/episode 66. That's where the show notes are. And as usual, if you're able to jump on iTunes and leave me a review, that would be a huge help. You can find out how to do that very quickly at timtopham.com/iTunes. Now, remembering too that we have our final Transform Your Teaching workshop in Australia, not this Sunday, but the next one as this goes out. So Sunday, the 20th of November. If you are in Brisbane, Australia, and you haven't registered yet, well, what are you waiting for? You need to come along and get motivated and excited with a great day, fun day of piano teaching skills and improvisation with a whole lot of other teachers. And the best thing is you get to sit at a piano and we're going to make music together. It's great fun. Everyone's had a ball. I've loved them. And it's our last one for this year. So make sure if you're in Brisbane that you register. You can find out more about that at timtopham.com/transform. Let's get straight into our interview. Here is my interview with Shelly Davis on her Piano Parent podcast. Shelly, welcome to today's show.
Thank you, Tim. I've been listening to your podcast for quite a while now, and I'm really excited to get to speak directly to you.
Well, it's very cool to be chatting to another podcaster in the piano teaching, piano education, music education field. So we're going to get on to that later, and I'm going to tell people about what you're doing. But before we get to the podcast side of things, tell us a little bit about your background and your current teaching.
Sure. I've been teaching about 27 years, and all of my students are normal, average, regular, everyday kids. None of my students are going to go on to become the next Van Cliburn or Lang Lang or anything like that. But I am giving them the tools and the things they need to be able to play for their church and play for school and family events. And to me, that is what a successful music education is all about, where they can use their musical talents for the enjoyment of others.
Absolutely. And so what are some of those things that you do in your teaching to teach them those skills?
Well, for example, this past summer, June through August, we're kind of on school break and all of that. But I still continue teaching in a relaxed schedule. And because it's more relaxed, we can do some more, off the beaten path kind of things. And we used the linear circle of fifths of major keys, except we call it the magic wand, which is something that I'll go into in an episode of mine in a few weeks. But we use that to lay out all of the possibilities of major keys. We'll choose a tonic. I show them how to use from the tonic how to go to a dominant or a subdominant, and then use that formula to create their own lead sheets or their own compositions. We'll analyze a pop song and see they only use 3 chords. We can do that. That's no big deal. And also at the end of last term, after they had finished their spring recital preparation, something fun that we did was to do an audio recording of their recital piece. But then we also Googled and found all kinds of free images for them to connect to their recital piece. And we used iMovie on the iPad, and they were really carefully listening to phrasing. And, well, this part is really quiet, so I want a picture that illustrates that. And that's what we called it, illustrating their spring recital. And we uploaded it to YouTube, and so they could share a virtual recital with their friends and family.
What a brilliant idea. I totally love it. What's the you said linear circle of fifths before. Is that a circle of fifth that's been unwound and put
all straightened out? Right. Yes.
Why do you use that version rather than the circular one, out of interest?
For me, I guess in my mind, it makes a little more sense to work on a linear plane, and we'll include numbers like for 4th graders, for example. For our state Music Teachers Association in Texas, we have a theory exam. 4th graders are required to know the key of F through the key of E. I go ahead and teach them B, because those are all of the keys that don't include a sharp or a flat in the name. And so we'll do the sentence, fat cats go down alleys eating bacon. And then above that, I'll just have them write in numbers, 1 over the F, 0 above the C, and then 1 through 5 above all of the others. And that's just a short little snapshot, and we write it out across their paper and then that gives them information, the order of sharps. And if we start from B and go backwards, it's the order of flats. It's just a wealth of information and a really short little concise thing. And for their theory test, there are, I would say, at least 3 or 4 questions that they can get the answers to from their magic wand. It's so easy. It's magical.
There you go. I love hearing about what teachers do with the circle of fifths, because I think, as you probably know, I'm a big exponent of using it in teaching a lot, all the time. I use it pretty much every lesson with every student, because it is so foundational to an understanding of music. Yeah. So it's great to hear how you're using it. Now, I read on your website a sentence that I really enjoyed, which was, in essence, this is you speaking, in essence, I am consciously working myself out of a job. This is talking about self-teaching. What do you mean by this? And should we all be trying to do the same thing?
It's the whole philosophy of you give a man a fish and he eats for 1 meal. You teach a man to fish and he eats for a lifetime. And my goal with my students is to give them a lifetime of musical enjoyment. And I'll joke with my students a lot, and I'll tell them, you do not want me sitting next to you when you're 65 years old and I'm 100 years old and don't have any teeth anymore. You don't want me telling you how to play this piece of music. You want to be able to figure it out on your own. And so how this looks in my studio from a week-to-week basis is that I will assign them what we call a Forsure piece. This is your assignment. You must work on this. But I'll say, everything that we talked about for this Forsure piece is also included in the next piece. And if you wanted to, you don't have to. The choice is completely yours. But as a bonus, you could work on this next piece. And of course, you and I know that we're teaching them to analyze and kind of dissect the music and decipher everything on their own. And they'll come back the next week. And if they did work on their bonus piece, then they're so proud of themselves. And of course, I cheer them on, and it's my evil plan.
No, it's great. It's making students think more than we just continually tell them. And I believe in that as well. It's great. Asking them questions, making them a little bit uncomfortable, not giving them all the answers. I think it's crucial.
Yes. Something else that we do that kind of is along these lines, I call it getting smart with their music. Once they learn a piece, I ask them to learn it as it's written, try to understand what the composer had in mind originally. But then if you think of something that you might want to do differently, or if you had been the composer, how would you have solved the end of this phrase, or what would you have changed? And that's an acronym, the SMART, where they could change the style or the melody or the articulations or the rhythm or even just the tempo. and making those small changes gives them an opportunity to kind of think and see how they might change things up a little bit.
Do you find students sometimes get frustrated when you just don't tell them what to do with things like that? My students do.
Yes, there are a lot of awkward silences.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Sometimes they'll be playing along and they'll accidentally, play something wrong, and we'll laugh and say, "Hey, I kind of like the way that sounds. We'll have to remember to do it that way later after we learn how it should be."
Accidental brilliance, I think I heard that called somewhere. It's great when students are improvising, and you have to really bring attention to it, because they'll just skip over it assuming it's wrong, and often it's better, isn't it? It's amazing.
I agree. Yes, happy accidents, I call them.
Yeah. All right, well, let's talk a little bit about your podcast. So you're the the founder, I guess, of the Piano Parent podcast. I love your alliterative title. Tell me about why you decided to start a podcast.
Well, I feel like this has kind of been a journey for myself for probably several months to a year. Going back in my podcast memory, I think Mario O'Hara might have been the first person that planted the seed of, he calls them flipped lessons, and that may not be his own term, but the idea where a teacher will record a video or a concept that they're trying to teach, something that they teach often. They'll do a video of that and then upload it onto YouTube or on their studio website, and that gives their parents and their students a chance to come back and refer to that video often. And I had done something similar to that with each of my individual students. If they're working on a finger exercise or something, I might record their hands and send the recording to their parents so they would have that to reference, during the week. But it was just here and there on a case-by-case basis with the students. And then I also listened to your episode 13 with Hugh Sung, and the two of you were talking about the future of piano teaching, and what was the word he used? Asynchronistic pedagogy.
I know. It's a big mouthful, isn't it? Asynchronous pedagogy. Yeah.
That's the word, yes. And I was a little overwhelmed with some of the things that he was talking about, all the wonderful videos that he has available for students and the online teaching that he does. But as he continued talking in the episode, he was so generous and mentioned how every teacher has something to offer, and what might connect with one student with a teacher might not connect with that same student with a different teacher. And it just gave me confidence as a teacher that, well, I do have some things to contribute and things that I would be interested in sharing. And then there was also another podcast that I will talk to you a little bit more later on, that kind of offers more of a step-by-step way of how to produce a podcast. And I just decided I'm dumb enough to give it a try, and what's going to be the worst that could happen?
Good for you. Well, look, it's for those who listen to this show and might perhaps not listen to many others, the podcasting world has literally exploded in the last 2 to 5 years, I guess. And it is becoming around the world, particularly in online business and marketing and, in fact, life, in everything. There's a podcast for just about everything, and oftentimes multiple ones. So I think you're on the right, you're taking the right move here, because it's such a great way to absorb content, I find. The thing I like about it is that you can, it's one of the only forms of content you can absorb while you're doing something else.
Exactly.
And
yes.
I try and encourage my listeners and viewers that, while you can sit down and watch the interview, totally cool, and sometimes that's great depending on what we're doing, most oftentimes I listen to podcasts while I'm in the car, because that's the best time to do it, or while you're walking or at the gym. Do you find you've had to explain the best way to use podcasts and even what podcasts are to some of the parents who are listening to your show?
To an extent, yes, but I agree with you. I think it is gaining more traction, and people are starting to listen to it more. And exactly like you said, where it's something that you can multitask and do while you're doing other things. And I'll be honest with you, I have made it available. I have made my parents in my studio, I've made them aware that it exists, but I I guess I'm not going behind them and have you listened to this episode? I'm hoping that once I have even more content available, then I can, for example, the magic wand that I talked about earlier, there's a podcast coming out with that soon. And I want to be able to send that link to parents when their children are studying for the test and all of that. But I agree with you anymore. It's like Netflix for radio, except, you can choose and it's information on demand, and anything that you can imagine, somebody has done a podcast on it.
Yep, and probably many of them. It's almost overwhelming. It's like the App Store. So look, while your podcast isn't designed for teachers specifically, I wanted to talk to you about it because it is obviously a fantastic resource for us through parents to our students in some ways. So what are some of the topics you've already covered and how many episodes have you done so far?
Okay. I agree. It's not designed for teachers, but teachers are definitely listening. And it's been kind of funny. Some teachers have said, I'm so glad that you did this podcast and I could send it to a parent. And it's not me saying that. I'm not the bad guy. You get to be the bad guy.
Yeah.
I'm fine with that. Let's see. I kind of looked at my analytics and I've released 12 podcasts so far. The first one was just an introductory kind of my goals for the podcast. But the top 3 that have been downloaded up to this point are episode 1, where I talk about establishing good practice habits. And episode 3, I titled that Piano Geography, which is simply the layout of the piano keys. And, unsuspecting parents, if they go to just Google this information, I don't know if you've listened to episode 3. I kind of got on a little bit of a soapbox.
I haven't yet, no.
About the alphabet stickers, that if you Google music alphabet, oh, it's so wonderful, put these stickers on your piano keys and it's so easy to find the keys. Well, a lot of teachers, that is a pet peeve for them. And an unsuspecting piano parent thinking they're helping might order those. And so if they listen to my podcast, they're going to be wiser as far as that goes. Another popular podcast has been episode 5, where I compare acoustic pianos and digital keyboards and kind of the pros and cons of either of those.
Brilliant. The whole helping teachers get through to parents who are trying sometimes to do their best but really don't quite know what they're doing. I think that is a great your podcast would be a great source of information for that. I can see exactly what you mean. And there's many other things that parents will do. I'm a huge exponent of for teaching reading, of the intervallic approach and not naming every good boy deserves whatever, that kind of thing.
Right.
But, you can easily work with students on your method and have parents go home and start trying to teach a different method, or why haven't you learnt that, or, that sort of thing. So I think this is great education for them. And that's why it's really great that you're doing this. So have you got some, we've talked about the stretched out Circle of Fifths episode planned. Have you got a couple of other ones up your sleeve that might be of interest to teachers who are listening for their parents?
Oh, boy.
It depends how far in advance you record too, because I tend to do, I try and keep a month ahead if I can, but I don't always. Sometimes I'm chasing my tail.
Okay, I'm glad to hear that. Yeah. Over the summer, I had hoped to record a whole year's worth, because I know during the school year, I am a busy girl, and I didn't want it to be neglected or be inconsistent or anything like that. I do have the magic wand coming out soon. Every 10th episode will be a list of 10 things. Episode 10 was a list of 10 ways to encourage a love of music, and just, regular, normal things that probably a lot of parents already do. And hopefully they can acknowledge that and recognize that, hey, we're on the right track. And episode 20 will be 10 reasons to maintain a playlist for their students. Once they learn a piece, 10 reasons why they should maintain that piece.
Oh, that's good.
And keep it going. And I've got some personal stories in that episode of my own traumatic experiences when I didn't have my music, but there was a piano and somebody knew I knew how to play. and I was stuck. Of course, I'm also excited. I'll be having teacher interviews and also parent interviews coming in the future, and I'm particularly excited about both of those. I know I, as a teacher, learn a lot of things just from listening to other teachers and how they operate things in their studio. And maybe I agree with it and maybe I don't, but I still feel like I learn and I grow from hearing that information. And I think the same will be true for piano parents. If they hear other parents are in the same struggle and it's hard to get their child motivated to practice, then it's not just your child and they don't have an allergy for piano. It's just they're just being a kid. And so I hope that these kinds of things will be helpful for teachers and parents.
Yeah, I think knowing what teachers are going through as well, and hearing that we all struggle with the same things, I imagine for parents it would be identical. Yep, you're not the only parent that has to force your child who loves music and loves piano to practice all the time.
Yes.
And it's okay to tell them to go and sit down at the piano. So I think that sorts of information is going to be fantastic. The interviews, I will really look forward to hearing some of the interviews.
Great.
Did you find that the podcasting medium was easy to get into, or was it harder than expected?
Well, as I was listening to other people's podcasts, the one in particular that was kind of more of a business class actually for life coaches, and listening to her. I don't know if this happens with you. When you start listening to one podcast, they might reference another podcast. And so then you go listen to them, and then it's a whole rabbit trail that you follow. And a couple of those, okay, I'm glad that's not only me. There are a couple of podcasting tutorials that I was able to listen to, and I would have the video YouTube tutorial open on one window on my computer, and I would listen and pause and then go over to another open window in my computer and do whatever that thing was that they had just described. So I think because I was on my summer hiatus, I had a little more time to devote to that. But then also the step-by-step guides that someone else had produced made it really easy too.
Yeah, there's an amazing amount of information out there. Are you finding you obviously didn't quite get to record a year's worth of content, which, to be honest, I think is probably a better thing, because you'll want to respond to what's coming up and, what changes during the year. And as we said just before we hit record, things change in the world. Apps, disappear or change their structure. So that might have been a little bit advantageous, I think.
I agree. I learned that the hard way.
Yeah, but great though. I certainly use my holiday time to record as much as I can, because, as you say, once you're teaching, it becomes much more difficult. Do you have anyone helping you with editing and uploading and things at this stage?
No, it's all me, and it's probably obvious that it's all me.
Oh, not at all. That's great.
I was proud. I guess my biggest first step was that I went online and hired, was it through Upwork maybe, and had someone do my logo for me. So that was the big step forward, and I was so proud of that logo. And then, but any of the recording, you should see the setup that I have here. It's just a microphone plugged into my laptop, and I just use Audacity to do the recording and the editing, and
that's how everyone gets started. Yeah, and but to be honest, you don't need really any more than that to get started. So good. I'm just really impressed that you've felt an opening, you've seen a need, and you've gone, what the hell? I'm going to try it out.
Yes.
I think it's great, Shelley. So on podcasts, have you got any favorites that might be of interest to other teachers, or perhaps they're even business ones or something like that?
Actually, that's probably primarily what I've been listening to. When I first started listening to podcasts, I was listening to Bible teaching and Bible study and things like that. And then any kinds of interests that I have, history and piano and parenting. I have 4 children, and so I would listen to podcasts about that. But And as I mentioned before, I would listen to Mario Ajero. He started out, he was probably one of the first piano teachers I became aware of that did a podcast, and he's kind of moved on to different things now. And then Andrea and Trevor Dow have Teach Piano Today, which is they've got some great podcast episodes. And again, I would love if they would have time to produce more and be a little more consistent with that part of their business. I know they're really busy. And of course, you've become the front runner, the lead person with consistent content. And I really appreciate everything that you have to offer to piano teachers.
Oh, thank you.
Probably the top 3 that I've been listening to, especially because I've been focused on learning how to podcast myself. Pat Flynn, I don't know if you're familiar with him.
Totally.
With Smart Passive. I listen to him a lot, and I like his smaller episode, a smaller podcast called Ask Pat. And each of the episodes are less than 10 minutes, and it's usually an online business or website or email type question. And I can consume those in small bits, which is nice.
Yeah.
And then, of course, John Lee Dumas has Entrepreneur on Fire. And I guess what he does, for anyone that's not familiar, is he interviews entrepreneurs every day, 7 days a week. And there are people from all businesses, all walks of life. And that was, I guess, the spark for me to interview teachers, and that would be interesting to hear how teachers operate their businesses from all around the world and all walks of life. So do you find he's
a bit full on? I can't listen to him because he's just, I don't know. I just prefer a slightly more chilled out personality, I think.
I was going to say, he and Pat both have the online podcast tutorials, but Pat's was the one that was a better connection for me. He's a little more laid back.
That's the one I did too.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
Pat would be so proud of the two of us.
Yeah, that's right. And Pat Flynn, for anyone that's listening, if you aren't familiar with these podcasts and you are interested in podcasts and business for that matter, he's one of the best in the world, or most recognized brands for ways to create passive income through online business. And he's a great he's been a great source of information for me in all the work that I do online, actually, with my membership, with the podcast, the blog. So if you are interested in any of this kind of online business, blogging, that kind of stuff, his is a great podcast, and it's called the Smart Passive Income Podcast, SPI, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's great. Well, we're listening to some very similar ones. What were you going to say?
Well, I was just going to say, for teachers, the podcast that I've kind of referenced a couple of times already today, that really got me at least thinking outside my own little studio box, is produced by Brooke Castillo, and she is a life coach, and she has I listened to her life coach podcast just for my own personal interest. And then I discovered that she has a separate podcast called How to Be a Life Coach. And I would very much recommend that to teachers, whether they're interested in having any kind of online business presence at all. I think this would be a great source of information for teachers. She goes at it from the approach of setting up your own life coach practice. But really, in a sense, aren't we as teachers life coaches? We're training our students to play music and all of that, of course, but I think we're coaching them in life lessons with self-discipline and time management. And then, of course, very often we end up having to train our parents as well. You do need to pay me on time. You do need to keep a schedule with your lessons. No, it's not okay to cancel every other week. And so we're coaching our parents almost in a parenting sense. So just a few things that she covers. It's her podcast, the How to Be a Life Coach. It's only 34 episodes, so it's not an ongoing series. It's complete, but she talks about things like how to set up shop, a step-by-step guide for setting up a website, who to contact for hosting your website, financial advice, having a separate business account, even creating a program. Studios want to have whatever camps or group lessons or things like that. And she talks about that. Again, it's from a life coaching standpoint, but I think so much of it is adaptable to our line of work. I feel like it's business class designed for independent teachers, independent coaches, and us as teachers.
Do you find that you get, by watching other people's podcasts or listening to other people's podcasts, you get ideas for your own in ways to do things or questions to ask and those sorts of things?
Yes. Yes, I do. And of course, as a teacher, our antennae are always up. We're always trying to find nuggets and things that will connect with our students and things that will help them connect with a new concept. And I find that the same is true for me now with the podcast, that I'm always kind of listening and being aware of things that might translate well into the piano teaching world that I could share with my piano parents.
And with your content, do you find that when parents ask you questions or you hear things that students are saying, that gives you sparks for what you can release an episode about?
It does, but I also want to be careful. I don't want the parents and the families in my studio to think that they are my guinea pigs or that I'm running a laboratory and I can't wait for them to slip up.
I wouldn't worry about it. My kids are all my lab brats.
And the same goes true too. You and I belong to a couple of different online forums for piano teachers on Facebook and such. And I know that is a safe place for parents, teachers, to be able to go and let their hair down and just kind of vent their frustrations. And I would never betray a confidence of a teacher. But if I see a general topic that kind of keeps floating to the surface, then I might offer a podcast with my own point of view on that. But I will certainly respect the privacy of the teachers that share online and then my own piano parents. I don't want to air their dirty laundry.
No, fair enough. All right, so we'll start wrapping it up. What advice would you give to any teachers who are listening who are like you were 6 to 12 months ago and thinking, maybe I've got some things I could share with people and a podcast would be a good way to go? What are some of the things that you've learned or some top tips for them?
Well, do it. Don't hesitate. Just try. And the things that I keep hearing Pat Flynn and John Lee Dumas and Hugh sung is you have something to say. Everyone has a story to share and share it. And it doesn't have to be perfect. And if you wait for the perfect moment, you'll never find it.
That's right.
And just hold your nose and jump in. And like you said, you can learn anything online, YouTube and iTunes. You can Google anything anymore and find a step-by-step guide. The confidence building thing for me was that I would search on YouTube and listen to other podcasts, and I would say, I could do it so much better than that. They've got something out there, but I think I could do better. Yeah. And so I would say, jump in.
Give it a shot. Google it, YouTube how to do it, and just try. And that's how I got started as well. I just thought, this is working in other industries. Let's do it for piano teaching. So there you go. It's been awesome chatting to you, Shelley. I love your philosophy of teaching. It's really well aligned with what I view as being important, and I'm really pleased with what you've been doing with the podcast as well. So congratulations, and I look forward to hearing more.
Thank you so much.
Now, is there anything we've forgotten to cover? Oh, you better tell everyone where to find your podcast.
Definitely. The website is easy. It's just pianoparentpodcast.com. And all of the episodes are right there on the website. And you can go to iTunes and search for the podcast there. And I have created a Facebook group for the Piano Parent Podcast. And I hope that will soon, someday, become a safe place that parents can do and share ideas and share frustrations. Be a safe place that they can kind of let their hair down, too. So I would welcome everybody to come in and join in on that.
Fantastic. Shelley, we're starting to lose your call quality, so I think we'll wrap it up there. Thank you very much for your time, and we look forward to hearing your next episode.
Thank you so much, Tim. This has been such a thing for me. So thank you so much.
Brilliant. All right. See you later.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. It's Tim here again. Thank you very much for listening to or watching today's episode. I do hope you got something out of it. I put them together to be as relevant and useful to you in your studio and your teaching as possible. So do let me know your feedback. If you've got any questions, comments, critique, whatever it is, you can email me at admin@timtopham.com. Now, before we go, I did want to mention a few little reminders. Firstly, if you're looking for transcripts of every episode from episode 50 onwards are available at the show notes page. And you can either view the transcript on screen or you can download it a PDF that you can use to research and refer to. To find the show notes of any episode of Tim Topham TV, just type in timtopham.com/episode and then the number. So e.g. timtopham.com/episode 20. Now, as you may have heard, I am offering currently you guys, my loyal podcast listeners, some of the most dedicated teachers I know, a $100 discount off annual membership of my InnerCircle. The code you need to access that is TTTV podcast, all one word, and the place you're going to find out more about what you get for membership, the benefits, hear some testimonials of current members. The place you go is timtopham.com/community. Finally, if you have a suggestion for a guest, I would always love to hear about it. A lot of you guys have some fantastic connections. So if you're thinking of anyone that would be really cool to interview, please email me, admin@timtopham.com. We'll get to me and I look forward to hearing from you, and we'll see you in the next episode. If the idea of a piano teachers community where you get to access the best educational resources, rub shoulders with expert teachers from around the world, and have immediate access to feedback for any of your questions, then InnerCircle membership is for you. The InnerCircle is my private community of piano teachers from across the globe who share a commitment to creating and delivering the most inspiring, modern and progressive learning experiences for their students. Membership is now open, so head to timtopham.com/community to find out more and get involved today. I can't wait to see you on the inside.